I'm in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York is part of what is commonly now called the Rust Belt. However, at one point, it was part of what was known as the Industrial Belt. Really, it's one of the things that built the United States. When the Industrial Revolution began to happen in the United States, largely it happened around the southern end of the Great Lakes. Now, it extended up into Canada on the northern end of the Great Lakes as well, but it was for us in the United States, it was really along the southern end of the Great Lakes. It was called the Industrial Belt. And it really went from Minnesota, where there was very high quality iron ore, and then the Great Lakes were used as a transportation network to connect all of the other components together, to get the coal there, to use the water, to use the limestone for the coking process, and all these things were able to make steel and all kinds of other things. And in addition to that, because it was connected to the upper Midwest, all the grains that were grown there were able to be processed into cereal products. And I don't mean just cereal like that. I mean breads and all kinds of things. If you look over here, you can see the General Mills factory is still there. And check this out. As you're looking at that and I'm standing here, it smells like Cheerios. I'm not kidding. It smells like Cheerios right here because they're still making the Cheerios over there. Well, this whole area there where the industrial belt was out, in other words, all along the southern end of the Great Lakes, that whole area there eventually began to fall apart. It was places that went from really Wisconsin, like Milwaukee, down into Chicago, around the southern end of Lake Michigan, over to Detroit, of course, and then over to Cleveland, and then places like Pittsburgh and Erie, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, New York, where I'm at, and Rochester. And what happened was, at the end of World War II, keep this in mind, industry, business in general, is always going to chase cheap labor if it can find it. And after World War II, there began to be markets open up that could provide cheap labor for industrialization. Things like, or places like Japan, which of course lost the war, was already industrialized, and because of that, they already had a talented and skilled population. And then after that, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. And then after that, as we know, China, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, places like Mexico and Colombia and Honduras and Ecuador, they could all provide this cheap labor force. And what began to happen was the industrial labor force of the United States, which was largely blue collar, heavily unionized, began to disappear because the jobs began to move to these other places. And as that happened, the factories and the industries fell apart and they collapsed. This is the reason when you look around, you can see that this is what much of the upper Midwest and the areas around the Great Lakes used to look like. Very, very heavily industrialized. My family used to work at a place not far from here called Bethlehem Steel, one of the biggest steel plants in the entire world at one point. It's completely gone now though. When I was a kid and I would come here, you could see the smokestacks just pumping all this smoke up into the air. It's all gone. The entire factory is completely gone. The only thing that remains there is a Ford stamping plant where they stamp out the parts for Ford automobiles. And as a result of this, when these jobs disappeared, this became known as the Rust Belt. And of course, this has caused all sorts of political turmoil in the United States because these people who had jobs, think about it for a minute. You're 50 years old, you have a good job, you're able to pay for your kids to go to school, you're able to buy a car, you have a vacation every year, you have health care, you're able to buy your house, and now suddenly it's gone. The corporation gives you a quick and very low payout, and that's it. And now what are you gonna do? You're not going back to college to get some new thing. You're not getting that at all. You're probably going to be, as that truck goes by, you're probably going to be the greeter at Walmart, or you're gonna work in some supermarket, or you're gonna work in some low-end service sector job. And that, of course, is not going to make you happy. And as a result of that, this has caused turmoil with American politics. All right, let's go.